It began, as these things often do, with an artifact. Dr. Elena Torres had always been fascinated by Earth's geological history, the cataclysms, extinctions, and rebirths that shaped the planet into what it was today. But even in her wildest dreams, she never expected to uncover the truth buried beneath the sediment of time. Standing in the cool shade of a research tent in the Atacama Desert, she carefully brushed sand off the surface of what looked like an impossibly intricate metal disc. Its surface shimmered in the sunlight, catching strange patterns that seemed to shift and swirl like liquid mercury. "What do you think, Elena?" asked her research partner, Victor Drake, leaning over her shoulder. He was always the skeptic, the one who would dismiss oddities as mundane, explainable phenomena. But today, his voice carried an uncharacteristic edge of unease. "I don't know," Elena murmured, running her gloved hand over the artifact's surface. It's not natural. This material, this isn't from Earth." Victor frowned, pulling out a magnifying lens. "Alien? Seriously? This isn't a sci-fi novel." Elena didn't answer. Her mind was racing, her thoughts spiraling through every lecture she'd attended, every paper she'd read about Earth's history of mass extinctions. 66 million years ago, the dinosaurs were wiped out. 200 million years before that, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. And then the Permian-Triassic extinction before that, like a grim clock ticking down the epochs. "Victor, remember what we've always joked about? The 200-million-year reset." Victor's brow furrowed as realization dawned. "You're not saying—" "I'm saying this isn't a coincidence," Elena said, standing. "Every 200 million years, Earth gets wiped clean. What if it's not a natural cycle? What if it's intentional?" Victor opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, the artifact began to hum. A low, resonant vibration spread through the air, sending chills down their spines. Elena stumbled back, her eyes wide with both fear and curiosity. The disc rose from the sand, levitating on a cushion of unseen energy. It spun slowly, emitting a series of pulses that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of reality. Around them, the desert landscape flickered like an old hologram, revealing flashes of something else, vast, gleaming structures that vanished as quickly as they appeared. "Elena, what the hell is this?" Victor's voice was shaking now, his skepticism shattered. "I think," she said, barely able to form the words, "it's a warning." The artifact pulsed one final time before emitting a beam of light that shot into the sky. The beam was blinding, piercing through the atmosphere like a spear, and for a moment, it seemed to stretch endlessly into space. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The artifact fell silent, clattering to the ground. Elena and Victor stood frozen, their hearts pounding in the deafening silence. And then the sky began to change. High above, streaks of light appeared, faint at first, but growing brighter and more numerous. They arced across the heavens like falling stars, their fiery trails painting an ominous message across the twilight. "Elena," Victor's voice was barely a whisper. "Those aren't meteors." She nodded, her throat dry. "No. They're coming." Within hours, the world knew something was wrong. News networks buzzed with reports of the mysterious lights in the sky, each one converging on Earth's orbit. Military forces scrambled to determine the nature of the threat, but there were no answers, only more questions. Panic spread like wildfire, fueled by speculation and fear. Elena and Victor found themselves swept into the chaos as the artifact they had discovered was confiscated by a joint task force led by Earth's most advanced intelligence agencies. They were brought to a sprawling underground base, where scientists and engineers pored over the alien device, their faces grim. "This is no coincidence," said General Marcus Kane, the task force leader. He was a no-nonsense man with a weathered face, his presence commanding even in a room full of experts. "Every 200 million years, Earth has experienced an extinction event. Dr. Torres, you believe this artifact is related to those events?" Elena nodded, her palms sweating as she addressed the room. "Yes. I believe it's a signal, a countdown maybe." The cycle aligns too perfectly with these lights in the sky. Whoever or whatever triggered those extinctions is back. Do we know what we're dealing with? Asked Dr. Yara Patel, an astrophysicist with a reputation for brilliance. Elena hesitated. Not exactly. But if they're advanced enough to orchestrate extinction-level events, they're far beyond anything we've ever faced. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them. General Kane cleared his throat. If these invaders have wiped out life on Earth before, why would they give us a warning? Why leave behind an artifact like this? Victor, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. Maybe it's not a warning. Maybe it's bait. To see if anyone's advanced enough to notice. Or, Elena countered, her mind racing, it's a test. Maybe this time, they want to see if we can fight back. The first ships arrived 3 days later. Massive and angular, they blotted out the sun as they descended, casting long shadows over cities and countryside alike. The ships were silent, their surfaces gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. They hovered with an unnatural stillness, their presence alone enough to paralyze the world with terror. The initial response was cautious. Humanity's leaders attempted communication, broadcasting messages of peace in every language and frequency they could manage. But the aliens offered no reply. Instead, they began to act. Beams of light shot from the ships, targeting infrastructure, military bases, and power grids with surgical precision. Entire cities were rendered powerless in moments, their inhabitants left in darkness. The beams didn't kill. They dismantled, disarmed, and disabled, leaving humanity vulnerable and confused. It wasn't until the first humans were taken that the true nature of the invasion became clear. Elena watched the footage in horror. The aliens, tall, spindly creatures with elongated limbs and glowing, crystalline cores, descended from their ships, moving with an unnerving grace. They emitted no sound as they rounded up humans, herding them into containment fields of shimmering energy. Victor slammed his fist on the table. We can't just sit here. They're abducting people, dismantling everything we've built. And what do you suggest we do? General Kane interrupted, his voice a low growl. Throw sticks at them? You've seen the reports. Bullets, missiles, even nukes. They don't even scratch their ships. Victor turned to Elena, his expression desperate. Elena, you said this might be a test. If that's true, there has to be a way to pass it. She stared at the screen, her mind a whirlwind of fear and determination. If it's a test, then we need to understand what they want. And the only clue we have is the artifact. Back in the research lab, Elena and Victor worked frantically to decipher the artifact's purpose. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered, its surface etched with intricate patterns that defied conventional logic. As they ran scans and simulations, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. What if it's a key? Victor suggested, his voice hoarse from hours of effort. What if this thing activates something? A weapon, a shield, anything? Or it's a trap, Elena muttered, though she didn't stop working. But at this point, we don't have a choice. Suddenly, the artifact began to hum again, its surface glowing with a soft, pulsating light. The pattern shifted, aligning into a sequence that seemed almost purposeful. Elena held her breath as the artifact emitted a beam of light, projecting a holographic image into the air. It was a map. Victor stared at it, his eyes widening. That's Earth. And those points, their coordinates. Elena's heart raced. Coordinates to what? I don't know, Victor said, already grabbing his gear. But we're going to find out. As Elena and Victor prepared to embark on their journey, the invasion intensified. The aliens began targeting Earth's natural ecosystems, eradicating species with cold efficiency. The skies darkened with the smoke of burning forests, and the seas churned with the fallout of their relentless assault. General Kane provided them with a military escort, though he made his skepticism clear. You'd better pray this map leads to something useful, he said. Because if it doesn't, we're out of time. Elena nodded, gripping the artifact tightly. It's all we've got. With that, their convoy set out, heading for the first set of coordinates. As they traveled through the desolate, ravaged landscape, Elena couldn't help but feel the weight of humanity's survival resting on their shoulders. Whatever lay at the end of this map, it had to hold the key to stopping the cycle once and for all. And as the convoy disappeared into the horizon, the alien ships loomed above, their silent menace a constant reminder that the clock was ticking. The convoy rumbled through the desolate landscape, its vehicles kicking up clouds of ash and dust. The once vibrant countryside was now a wasteland, scarred by the alien invasion. Towering alien ships floated ominously in the sky, their crystalline forms pulsing faintly, as if alive. Elena sat in the lead transport, her eyes fixed on the artifact clutched in her lap. Its intricate patterns glowed faintly, as if urging them forward. Victor glanced at her from across the cramped cabin. "You think we'll find anything at these coordinates?" "We have to," Elena replied, her voice firm despite the gnawing doubt in her gut. If this artifact is some kind of key, then whatever it leads to might be the only way to fight back. Their destination was a remote mountain range in Siberia, one of the coldest and most isolated regions on Earth. According to the artifact's holographic map, something lay buried deep beneath the frozen landscape, something that had been hidden for millions of years. General Kane, riding in the vehicle behind them, had insisted on sending a heavily armed escort. "If this is a trap," he'd said, "you'll need all the firepower you can get." Elena didn't argue. She'd seen what the aliens were capable of, how effortlessly they dismantled Earth's defenses. If these coordinates led them into danger, she wanted every advantage they could muster. The convoy reached the base of the mountains as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the icy peaks. The air was bitterly cold, each breath forming a plume of frost. The soldiers set up a perimeter while Elena, Victor, and a team of scientists examined the artifact. "It's reacting," Elena said, watching as the patterns on its surface pulsed faster, brighter. "We're close." "Close to what?" Victor muttered, scanning the rocky terrain. "This place looks like it hasn't been touched since the Ice Age." "Exactly," Elena replied. "Which is why it's the perfect hiding place." The artifact emitted a sudden, piercing tone, startling the group. A beam of light shot from its surface, illuminating a jagged cliff face. The light shimmered, revealing a hidden entrance carved into the rock. Victor let out a low whistle. "Well, that's subtle." The soldiers moved in first, weapons raised, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The entrance led to a steep, winding tunnel that descended deep into the mountain. The air grew colder with each step, the walls coated in a thin layer of frost. "This is ancient," Elena murmured, running her fingers over the smooth, alien carvings that lined the walls. "Far older than anything human." Victor crouched beside a strange symbol etched into the floor. "It's like the artifact was left as a guide to this place."
"But why?"
"Why leave a map instead of just wiping us out like they did before?" Elena shook her head. "Maybe they're testing us, seeing if we're worth saving or fighting." After what felt like hours of descending, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. The sight stole their breath. Towering pillars of crystal, each glowing with a soft, inner light, filled the space, casting shifting patterns of color across the walls. In the center of the chamber stood a massive structure, a spherical object suspended above the ground by unseen forces. Its surface shimmered like liquid, constantly shifting and reforming. Victor took a cautious step forward. "What the hell is that?" Elena's eyes widened. "A repository. Maybe a weapon." The artifact in her hands began to hum again, its glow syncing with the pulsating light of the sphere. She approached cautiously, holding the artifact out like an offering. The sphere responded, extending a tendril of light toward her. The two objects connected, and a sudden rush of energy filled the room. Elena gasped as her mind was flooded with images, scenes of Earth's history flashing by in rapid succession. She saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the devastation of past extinction events, and finally, the truth. The aliens were called the Zephyrian, an ancient race that saw themselves as galactic gardeners. Every 200 million years, they returned to Earth, their purpose twofold: to destroy ecosystems they deemed stagnant and to test whether intelligent life could rise to the challenge of resisting them. Humanity's survival was, in their eyes, a matter of proving its worth. "They're not just wiping us out," Elena said, her voice trembling as she broke free from the vision. "They're resetting the planet. They think they're improving it." Victor stared at her, his face pale. "And, if we don't stop them, they'll wipe the slate clean," she said grimly. "We'll be just another failed experiment." The repository revealed more than just the Zephyrians' motives. It contained a wealth of knowledge, fragments of their technology, strategies for disrupting their neural networks, and most importantly, the blueprint for an ancient defense system. The system had been activated once before, millions of years ago, during the Permian extinction. But it had failed, overwhelmed by the sheer power of the Zephyrian fleet. "We can use this," Elena said, her voice filled with hope as she studied the holographic projections. "If we can activate the defense system, we might be able to repel them." Victor pointed to a cluster of symbols on the blueprint. "These coordinates, they're scattered across the planet. Are these components of the system?" "Yes," Elena replied. "We'll have to find them, and fast." "The invasion's escalating." General Kane's voice crackled over the comms. "Dr. Torres, we've got incoming. You'd better get up here." The group sprinted back through the tunnels, the repository fading into darkness behind them. When they emerged into the cold night air, they saw what Kane had warned them about. The Zephyrian had found them. The alien drones descended in a swarm, their crystalline forms glinting in the moonlight. They moved with terrifying precision, each one emitting a high-pitched whine as they closed in on the convoy. Soldiers opened fire, their bullets ricocheting off the drone's shimmering surfaces. "Fall back," Kane shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Elena and Victor scrambled into a transport as the soldiers fought to hold the line. The artifact in Elena's lap pulsed urgently, its patterns shifting as if guiding her. "It's pointing to the next location," she realized. "We have to go now." Victor slammed his hand against the driver's shoulder. "You heard her. Move." The convoy roared to life, engines howling as they tore through the snow-covered terrain. The drones pursued relentlessly, their energy weapons carving through the vehicles one by one. Elena gritted her teeth as the transport jolted violently, narrowly avoiding a blast. "This isn't going to work," Victor said, his voice tight with panic. "We can't outrun them forever." Elena's mind raced. They needed a way to shake the drones, or fight back. She remembered the defense system's blueprint, the symbols that had flashed before her eyes. One of the components was nearby, buried beneath an ancient glacier. "Head for the glacier," she shouted. "We might find something there to help us." The driver didn't question her. The convoy veered off course, heading for the massive wall of ice in the distance. The drones closed in, their weapons ripping through the vehicles like paper. Soldiers fought valiantly, but their numbers dwindled with every passing second. When they reached the glacier, Elena leapt from the transport, the artifact glowing brighter than ever. She followed its guidance, her breath fogging in the freezing air as she searched for the component. "There," Victor shouted, pointing to a faint glow beneath the ice. They worked quickly, using charges to blast through the frozen surface. Beneath the ice was a sleek, metallic structure, a dormant piece of the ancient defense system. Elena activated the artifact, which emitted a beam of energy that synced with the component. The structure roared to life, sending out a pulse that disrupted the drone's movements. "They're retreating," Kane shouted, watching as the drones faltered, their crystalline bodies shattering under the pulse. Elena fell to her knees, gasping for breath. "One down," she muttered, looking up at Victor. "For more to go." Victor extended a hand, helping her to her feet. "And we're not stopping until we've got them all." As the group regrouped, Elena felt a spark of hope ignite within her. The odds were against them, but for the first time, they had a chance, a way to fight back against the Zephyrian and end the cycle of destruction. The battle was far from over, but humanity's resolve had never been stronger. The discovery of the first defense system component beneath the glacier had bought them time, but it had also confirmed their fears. The Zephyrian were growing more aggressive. Reports of mass abductions and environmental destruction poured in from every corner of the globe. The alien fleet was now openly attacking major cities, their ships unleashing devastating energy blasts that reduced entire metropolises to rubble. Elena and her team had no choice but to push forward. The artifact had revealed 4 additional coordinates, each marking the location of another component needed to complete the ancient defense system. Together, these pieces would form a planetary shield capable of repelling the Zephyrian fleet. But they were racing against the clock. Every hour brought the invaders closer to wiping Earth clean. The convoy pressed on, traveling across war-torn landscapes and oceans of fire, their ranks dwindling with each encounter. General Kane's soldiers fought valiantly, but the Zephyrians' drones were relentless. Each skirmish left the convoy weaker, their supplies stretched thin, their hope hanging by a thread. The second coordinate led them to the heart of the Amazon rainforest, where the dense canopy concealed a hidden temple older than any human civilization. The structure pulsed faintly with alien energy, its walls covered in symbols that mirrored those on the artifact. "This is it," Elena said, her voice hushed as she approached the temple's entrance. The second piece of the system. Victor studied the symbols carved into the stone. How did this survive all these millennia? And why here? Because the Zephyrian wanted it hidden, Elena replied. They weren't just testing us. They were challenging us to prove we're worthy of survival. Inside the temple, the air was thick with humidity and the scent of decay. They descended into the depths, navigating crumbling corridors lined with alien technology. At the center of the temple, they found it, a massive obelisk of glowing crystal, humming faintly as the artifact in Elena's hands began to react. "Same procedure as before," Victor said, keeping his voice low. "Let's make this quick." Elena stepped forward, holding the artifact toward the obelisk. The 2 objects synchronized, sending waves of light rippling through the chamber. The obelisk roared to life, emitting a burst of energy that illuminated the temple like a second sun. "Energy signature is spiking," one of the scientists reported over the comms. "This is definitely part of the defense system." But before they could celebrate, the ground trembled violently. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling as the distant sound of drones echoed through the jungle. "They've found us," Kane growled, gripping his rifle. "Everyone move. Secure the obelisk and prepare for extraction." The team worked quickly, deploying portable power units to stabilize the obelisk's activation. Meanwhile, the soldiers set up defensive positions outside the temple, their weapons trained on the approaching swarm of Zephyrian drones. The battle that followed was brutal. The drones descended in waves, their crystalline forms shimmering in the sunlight as they tore through the trees. The soldiers fought valiantly, but the Zephyrians' numbers seemed endless. "Elena, we don't have much time," Victor shouted, his voice barely audible over the gunfire. "The obelisk is active, but we need to get it linked to the other component." "I'm working on it," Elena replied, her fingers flying over the artifact's controls. The obelisk emitted another burst of energy, this time sending a signal to the component beneath the glacier. The 2 pieces of the system were now connected, creating a faint energy barrier that flickered briefly before stabilizing. "It's working," Elena exclaimed. "The system is coming online." But their victory was short-lived. The drones redoubled their assault, their weapons piercing through the soldiers' defenses. Kane barked orders, his voice hoarse as he directed his troops to hold the line. "Elena, get to the transport," he shouted. "We'll cover you." Elena hesitated, her heart pounding. "Not without you. Go." Kane roared, firing his rifle at an approaching drone. "That's an order." Victor grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the transport. "He's right. If we don't make it to the next site, all of this is for nothing." With tears in her eyes, Elena followed Victor, leaving Kane and the soldiers to face the swarm. The transport roared to life, speeding away from the temple as the sounds of battle faded into the distance. The third coordinate took them to the icy tundra of Antarctica, where the biting cold and relentless winds tested their endurance. Beneath a sprawling glacier, they uncovered another ancient structure, this one housing a massive ring-like device embedded in the ice. "This is it," Elena said, her breath fogging in the frigid air. The third piece of the system. Activating the device was no small feat. The extreme cold had damaged its power core, forcing Victor and the remaining scientists to improvise. They worked tirelessly, their fingers numb from the cold, as they rerouted energy from their portable generators. As the ring hummed to life, the artifact emitted another beam of light, linking the three components into a single network. The energy barrier around Earth grew stronger, its shimmering surface visible from orbit. But the Zephyrian weren't finished. Their flagship, a massive, angular vessel that dwarfed anything humanity had ever seen, descended from the heavens, its presence casting an oppressive shadow over the tundra. The ground shook as the ship deployed a new wave of drones, each one larger and more heavily armed than before. "We can't fight that," Victor said, his voice trembling as the flagship loomed above them. "Not with what we have." "We don't need to fight it," Elena replied, her eyes blazing with determination. "We just need to buy enough time to activate the last two components." The convoy barely escaped Antarctica with their lives. The Zephyrian flagship pursued them relentlessly, its weapons tearing through their vehicles and scattering their forces. By the time they reached the fourth coordinate, a desert canyon in the American Southwest, only a handful of soldiers remained. The fourth component was a towering spire, its surface etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. As Elena activated it, the energy barrier around Earth flickered again, growing stronger and more stable. But the Zephyrian weren't about to let them succeed. The flagship unleashed its full fury, bombarding the canyon with energy blasts that sent shockwaves rippling through the ground. Rocks and debris rained down as the team scrambled to secure the spire. "This is it," Elena said, her voice trembling. "One more piece, and the system will be complete." The final coordinate led them to the Pacific Ocean, where a volcanic island concealed the last component, a massive, spherical device submerged beneath the waves. The team deployed submersibles to reach it, braving the crushing depths and turbulent waters. As the artifact activated the final piece, the energy barrier around Earth solidified, its shimmering surface glowing brightly against the darkness of space. The Zephyrian fleet recoiled, their ships faltering as the barrier disrupted their systems. But the flagship remained. "We've done it," Elena said, her voice filled with both relief and fear. "The defense system is online." Victor pointed to the flagship on the horizon. "Then why is that thing still coming?" Elena's heart sank. The defense system had stopped the fleet, but the flagship was too powerful, its energy signature overwhelming the barrier. "We need to overload the system," she realized. "Redirect all its power into a single pulse, enough to destroy the flagship." Victor stared at her. "That'll burn out the system. The barrier will collapse." "It's our only chance," she said, her voice firm. "If we don't stop that ship, nothing else will matter." As the flagship approached, Elena and her team worked frantically to reroute the system's power. The artifact glowed brighter than ever, its patterns shifting into a final configuration. "This is it," Elena said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "Let's finish this." With a final command, the defense system unleashed a massive pulse of energy, a blinding wave that tore through the sky and struck the flagship. The ship shuddered, its angular form cracking and disintegrating as the pulse ripped it apart. The explosion lit up the horizon, a dazzling display of light and fire that marked the end of the Zephyrian flagship. For a moment, the world was silent, the air heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Then slowly cheers began to rise. The Zephyrian were defeated, their fleet scattered, their invasion thwarted. Elena fell to her knees, exhaustion and relief washing over her. They had done it. The cycle had been broken. The ocean waves lapped gently against the scorched shores of the Pacific island, their rhythmic sound oddly soothing after the chaos that had unfolded. Smoke still lingered in the air, remnants of the Zephyrian flagship's fiery destruction. Above, the sky was clear for the first time in weeks, no longer marred by the ominous presence of alien ships. Elena sat on a jagged rock near the water's edge, the artifact resting in her lap. Its glow had dimmed, the intricate patterns on its surface now faint and unreadable. It had done its job, guiding humanity to activate the ancient defense system. But the cost had been staggering. Behind her, Victor approached, his boots crunching against the gravel. His face was gaunt, streaked with dirt and exhaustion, but his eyes still held a flicker of determination. "How are you holding up?" he asked, sitting beside her. Elena sighed, running her fingers over the artifact's surface. "It's over, isn't it? The Zephyrian are gone." "For now," Victor replied cautiously. "But the system's fried. That last pulse burned out every component. If they come back, they'll find us ready," Elena said firmly, cutting him off. "This time, we fought back. Next time, we'll be prepared." The survivors gathered around what remained of their camp. General Kane, bruised and limping but alive, stood at the center of the group. His commanding presence, even in the face of so much loss, was a source of quiet strength for the weary soldiers and scientists. "We lost good people," Kane said, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "Too many. But because of them, because of all of you, we're standing here now. The Zephyrian underestimated us. They thought we'd crumble under their assault. Instead, we gave them hell." A ripple of agreement passed through the crowd, though it was subdued. The cost of victory was etched into every face, a heavy reminder of those who hadn't made it. Kane turned to Elena, gesturing for her to join him. She hesitated, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, but Victor nudged her forward. "You earned this," he whispered. "Go." Elena stepped into the center, the artifact clutched tightly in her hands. She looked out at the assembled group, her chest tightening as their eyes turned to her. "I don't know what the Zephyrian expected when they came here," she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Maybe they thought we'd fall in line, or maybe they thought we weren't worth the effort of sparing. But they were wrong." She held up the artifact, its faint glow catching the light. "This isn't just a piece of alien technology. It's proof of who we are. Every 200 million years, they came back to reset this planet, to erase life and start over. But not this time. This time, we proved that humanity is stronger than the cycle." The crowd was silent, their gazes fixed on her. "We've shown them that we won't be wiped out. That we'll fight for our place in this galaxy," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "And even if they come back, they'll find us ready. We'll rebuild, we'll learn, and we'll make sure this planet and its people are never at their mercy again." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing across the island. For the first time in days, the air seemed lighter, filled with hope instead of fear. In the days that followed, the survivors began the long journey back to the mainland. The alien fleet had been scattered, their ships disabled or destroyed by the energy pulse, and Earth's skies were finally clear. But the scars of the invasion remained. Cities lay in ruins, entire ecosystems had been devastated, and millions of lives had been lost. Elena, Victor, and Kane worked tirelessly to coordinate relief efforts. With the defense system offline, they knew Earth was vulnerable, but the knowledge they had gained from the repository offered a glimmer of hope. The Zephyrian's technology was centuries ahead of humanity's, but it was no longer incomprehensible. Engineers and scientists began reverse engineering the components they had recovered, laying the foundation for Earth's future defenses. Weeks turned into months, and the world slowly began to rebuild. In the ruins of what had once been New York City, Elena stood atop a crumbled skyscraper, watching as construction crews worked below. Massive machines cleared debris, while teams of volunteers distributed supplies to survivors. Victor joined her, handing her a cup of steaming coffee. "You're becoming quite the symbol, you know?" She raised an eyebrow. "A symbol?" He nodded, grinning. "The scientist who helped save the world. People are calling you a hero." Elena shook her head, her expression somber. "I'm not a hero. I was just in the right place at the right time. The real heroes are the ones who gave everything to get us here." Victor sipped his coffee, his gaze distant. "Do you think they'll come back?" "They always come back," she said softly. "But next time, we'll be ready." In the heart of the Pacific, a new research station was being constructed, a state-of-the-art facility designed to study and replicate the Zephyrians' technology. Elena and Victor worked closely with the team, using the artifact as a guide. Though its power had diminished, it still held secrets, waiting to be unlocked. One evening, as the sun set over the ocean, Elena found herself alone in the lab. She stared at the artifact, its patterns faint but still alive, as if it were waiting for something. "Are you still watching us?" she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Are you waiting to see if we're worthy?" The artifact didn't respond, but a faint pulse of light flickered across its surface, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Months later, the first test of Earth's new planetary shield was conducted. Using a combination of human ingenuity and alien technology, the shield projected a protective energy field around the planet, strong enough to repel most external threats. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Elena watched the test from the control room, her chest swelling with pride as the shield came online. The barrier shimmered faintly in the atmosphere, a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. "We did it," Victor said, standing beside her. "We actually did it." Elena nodded, her eyes fixed on the glowing field. "It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about thriving." Years passed, and Earth transformed. The invasion had left its mark, but it had also united humanity in ways that had seemed impossible before. Borders became less significant, and collaboration between nations flourished. The knowledge gained from the Zephyrians' technology spurred advancements in energy, medicine, and space exploration. Elena, now a respected figure in both science and global leadership, often found herself reflecting on the events that had brought them here. The cycles of destruction, the ancient test left by the Zephyrian, and the ultimate triumph of humanity, it all seemed like a distant dream. But she never forgot the cost. Every year, on the anniversary of the invasion, she and Victor visited a memorial built in honor of those who had sacrificed their lives. It stood in the center of a sprawling garden, its surface etched with the names of the fallen. One evening, as they stood before the memorial, Victor broke the silence. "Do you think they'll ever return?" Elena placed a hand on the cold stone, her expression resolute. "If they do, they'll find a different Earth. Stronger, smarter, and more united than ever." Victor smiled. "I'll drink to that." Elena laughed softly, her gaze lifting to the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian were watching, waiting for their next move. But Earth would be ready. The cycle had been broken, and humanity's future was no longer a question of survival. It was a promise of defiance.